just lost the feel. I need time to heal, I can't steer the wheel, cause this drive it kills, and it gives me chills. A nice road it feels, I slip off the peel and crash all the steel. Will I ever heal? I can't move on till I let go. I feel so lost, never at home. Need to be strong, every breath hold, cause I can't move on till I let go. I can't move on till I let go. I feel so lost, never at home. Need to be strong, every breath hold, cause I can't move on till I let go.
My bad.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Banter with Antor. Is it Banter with Antor? I still haven't figured that out. Special edition. This is the first time I've ever had two guests on at once, and time got away from me, so I don't actually have like an overlay, but I have names, so that's legit. But I'm really excited because we have two awesome special guests today, and we're going to be talking about the Big Esports Conference. I'm going to throw up, oh, that's the wrong screen. I'm going to throw up I got to pull up my run of show here, make sure we're good. But first, I want to let you guys introduce yourselves. I have Kevin first on my screen, so I'll give it to Kevin first.
Yeah, thanks. Kevin Palmer, Assistant Director of Esports and Intramurals at the University of Michigan.
Jacob VanRyn, Commissioner / CEO of the NECC.
Nice. Welcome. That was the shortest intros I've ever seen.
I was like, does he want like? Do you want my life story?
I don't know what I want. I was gonna queue up a tweet, but then it was like, oh, it's back to me. Okay. No. The next thing I want is to allow one of you to just explain the Big Esports Conference. Like, just
That's
go.
Kevin. That's Kevin.
That's Kevin. All right, Kevin, go.
Yeah.
All right. So the Big Esports Conference is a collaborative effort between all of the Big Ten member schools, and saying that we were kind of done not playing each other and playing into the rivalries and engaging our fan base and our alumni in the ways that traditional athletics do. And so with, having all member schools, including future member schools, USC and UCLA and Washington and Oregon knocking on the door, wanting in, we said we couldn't say no to doing this and putting it together. It was probably, we started these talks, back in March, April, Jacob? Yeah. And so
somewhere in their spring.
Yeah, and it all kicked off with Doug Goon at Minnesota reaching out to the actual Big Ten and saying like, hey, it's been done before by the Big Ten. League of Legends was a big thing on Big Ten Network. I remember that pre-COVID. So saying like, hey, you've done this before, let's do it again. Esports is way bigger than it was then, and and then we didn't. We had their support, but we just didn't get their endorsement just because they're focused on other things. And right now, which hats off to them for not trying to overload their plate and trying to focus on what they want to. And so yeah, the schools just decided to let's do this, put it together, and then we I asked Jacob and the NECC, what do you think? And it's kind of all history from there.
How has it been coordinating with some of those student clubs thus far? Because you've got a whole plethora of different types of programs and clubs involved in this.
It's been a challenge. There's been a few schools that weren't looped in until the very end that committed to being a part of this. And we said too, like, it was great to have 16 out of 16. But we were good with, I think we set the number at like 12 that way we could have a good, robust season. And if we only had 6 or something like that, it just wouldn't seem viable for that initiative. But it's actually been really pleasant. The students have been fantastic about responding. We've had a Discord set up prior to where we landed now, and there was just good communication there. And also, kudos to when students were on summer break, there was a lot of staff that had no idea about esports, but wanted to represent their school and be present and be in those conversations. And they stepped up and they showed up to the meetings and they weighed in and asked questions. And that was huge to the launch of this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I guess let me add just real quick on this, Adam. What I've been so impressed with is the fact that how the member institutions have collaborated on this. And Kevin's not going to say it, so I'm going to say it for him. A large part of it is because of his leadership and his direction and his charge in getting this going. I think he, Doug, Chris Bilski at Michigan State University really led this charge in many ways. But the fact that each of the schools has really bought in and there's really been a collective sense of that community of like, we want to do this together. We want everybody on board has really been pretty cool to be a part of, and something probably I didn't expect, how collaborative, how everybody's been on the same page to get this launched so quickly.
That's awesome. Have you seen any schools in particular that weren't looking at supporting esports officially, like starting to get interested and involved?
We have no, honestly, it's been the opposite. It's been some schools have like way higher ambitions than what's possible at this moment. And so it's been kind of like, hey, let's pump the brakes. They're like, well, let's do like 9 titles and a LAN each semester and all of that. And it's like, well, let's this is a lot of coordination. So I don't think we've had anybody that's been resistant.
No, and I think to that point, I think what's been pretty special has been the fact that, obviously, Adam, you know this very well, the fact that wide-ranging budgets, wide-ranging scopes, wide-ranging emphasis on each of the respective campuses, but they've all said this is what we can do and this is what we want to do. And I think that's been kind of cool, is looking at it through that prism, looking at it through that lens of like, hey, we can do one LAN at the end, we can do a 2-day event that makes sense, and let's all come together. Let's find a way to make that happen. That's going to be a hallmark event in year 1 of the Big Esports Conference. But I think as we've looked at it that way, it's been really special to work with the institutions, all the way from fully flushed out, fully funded varsity scholarship, all the way down to student run clubs, and making sure that everybody was sort of on that same page of like, to Kevin's point there, this is what we can do, this is what's reasonable, this is where we can make it a success. Let's not bite off more than we can chew. Let's get everybody here. We have this sort of goal, we have this timeline, we have this model, and that's been really special and really fun to be a part of, and working at it from that scope and that lens.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll just put out this in chat. Like, if anyone has questions, throw it in chat. Go for it. I have my own, obviously, because it would be probably a silent first 30 minutes if I didn't. But yeah, I think what's so exciting about this and why everyone is like so pumped about like D1 esports in general is revenue. I mean, we've talked about esports doesn't have a way to make money, and collegiate esports, like, there's no sponsors, no dollars coming in, no eyes, no viewership. But D1's present an opportunity where people might be a little optimistic about what that could look like. And I want to shed a light on that and ask, like, has that been a conversation? Is this part of like NEC's plan at some point? I mean, if you're putting out these broadcasts, the Big Esports Conference putting out broadcasts, like, that seems like pretty valuable, potentially at some point, pretty valuable assets to sell. I'm assuming that's been a conversation at some point.
Yeah, I think we haven't gotten into the weeds on that, quite frankly. I think that, Adam, the central focus has been making sure that everybody's on the same page, making sure that everybody's agreed to where we're at and what the goal is, even what the schedule is going to look like, what the calendar is going to look like, with timelines for things of that nature. I think that Kevin and his crew and Michigan, and leading the charge and working with the Big Ten, they've had some conversations at that level, and understanding that. I think you're right. I think you speak to it, but we're not there yet in terms of where this looks like. Now, Kevin's doing some things internally at Michigan. Other schools are doing some things, on their respective campuses. But yeah, I think we'll get there. We're proud to support the members. We're proud to support the institutions any way that we can. We're not worried about that right now. It honestly, for us, if we can get some partners, make sure that The schools from the West Coast can get out, for the land, and those things can be paid for. And it's not a real challenge for the institutions that aren't fully funded. And we can support them in that way. Then I think that'll be a success in year one.
Yeah, we a big conversation that was early was funding, and to what you said, Adam, the mix of schools that we have, from fully funded, and Jacob touched on it, to no funded, and in some ways no recognition, is we didn't want to make a challenge and then also try to bring in revenue and like make that a primary thing, because then it comes down to like, well, how do we distribute it? And if the Big Ten would have been here, then it would have been simple, right? That would have been their whole department. And so from the school's perspective, we're kind of leaving it as if they were here. And we're going to have the Big Esports Conference YouTube channel, and each school will have a stream key to that channel and be able to stream their matches from the BEC to there. Those streams will be student produced, 100%. That's kind of like the agreement amongst all the schools. So, we're putting real work experience. The NECC has rights to claim some of those big games too. The schools can still, broadcast those games. But the NECC could jump in too if they want to do like a full production. But then and we'll give out an overlay package for, with Legal West, we'll have some overlays that are built into the system for the schools to use. So there's kind of a uniformity, but on their schools' individual streams, they're more than able to sell ads or put, if they have like, local car dealership that wants in, and be able to do that space so that everyone can kind of be responsible for their own bring in a sense, and to start off. And we'll obviously look at things. The NECC is going to look at things and evaluate as the year goes on, but it's all a learning curve.
Yeah, I imagine. I don't know if there's a example of anyone who's done something like this in the last couple of years. We mentioned the Big Ten, but I believe that was probably pushed out of the Big Ten network, which is, I believe, legally a separate entity. And I think a lot of that was being ran by ESL at the time. Yeah, this is new for this era of esports. And I mean, this era of esports is also new post venture capital money boom, I guess. So who knows what sponsorship dollars are going to look like this year?
Adam, if you have some of that, we'll take it.
I don't, honestly. There's a part of me that is worried about the space in general the next year or two when it comes to sponsorship dollars, because I think some leagues got used to some good scholarship dollars coming in, and I don't know if those will sustain. I don't know. We'll see. You spoke a little bit about like watching this kind of go. Is this a multi-year deal? Has there been conversations about future years that have been solidified? Is this a first year try it and see how it goes?
I'll let you touch on that, Jacob. Yeah. I mean,
for us, this is a collaborative effort with it. We're supporting the Big Esports Conference. I mean, that's what this boils down to. Obviously, we want it to be a long-term relationship. We're going to do everything in our power to support the member institutions. I mean, for us, Adam, this is similar to the launch of the NECC in many ways. We want schools to choose to compete with us. We want the Big Ten members to be like, that was an awesome experience. I want to do that again. One of the things we talk about internally is saying that when a school signs up to compete with us, and in this instance, it's the conference, we're going to do everything in their power so that next semester, next year, they're going to choose to do it again, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, we're a customer service organization. Now we focus on esports, so that's our entity. That's what we're proud to be a part of, and that's certainly the collegiate space. But at the end of the day, obviously, I want to. I mean, the friendships. I mean, Kevin, this is where I get a little sort of holier than thou. The friendship. I mean, I consider Kevin a good friend. And we've never hung out in person, right? But we spend, numerous times chatting and every day, stuff like that. And, I support, and I'm going to root for him, no matter what. And he knows that. And I think the same, if you asked him, the same would be said about us. And this is a collaborative effort. I didn't know Doug in Minnesota until these conversations started. He's been unbelievably positive and supportive to work with, and things like that. There's a list of names that I could share. So that's important. For me, coming from the traditional athletic side of the house, to be and live in collegiate esports now is really meaningful for me. And those relationships and those bonds are really why I've chosen this as a career, quite frankly. So yeah, I mean, that's a long way of saying, obviously we hope a year from now that we're looking at it for 24, 25. Now, if the Big Ten wants to get involved and say, hey, we're going to take this over, we're not going to push back. There's not going to be anything ugly in this situation. We're going to support the members. We're going to support the schools. And that when this thing ends at the end of the 23, 24 academic year, their student athletes are going to have a great experience, and they're going to compete for championships for the regular season. They're going to compete for championships in a postseason element. And I think that's going to be exciting. And we're going to do everything in our power to support that at a really high level, just like everything else that we do.
Yeah, one thing to know about like all the schools in the Big Ten is we have to be both protective of our brands and cognizant of how quick we can be told something changes. And so, with partnering up with the NECC, we wanted to make sure that there wasn't a spot where we were bound to the NECC, and then if the Big Ten did come in and our school said, hey, you need to go to do this instead, that it wouldn't, in a sense, ruin relationships or put anybody in like a financial bind or anything like that. So it's really been, a lot of handshakes up to this point.
Such as esports for the most part, for better or worse. But we talked about the Big Ten involvement quite a bit without actually like sharing a lot. Without throwing anybody under the bus or throwing out too much dirty laundry, could you like walk us through what does that look like so far from a traditional sports conference that is massive, hasn't done a lot in esports in a long time, if any at all. But is there excitement? Are they actually wanting to be involved, or are they like, no, just don't use our logo. We'll talk later if there's money, like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I have to be clear. There was absolutely no, there's no bad blood or anything with us in the Big Ten. They were very clear about what they needed to get done, and their priorities right now were the mess that is conference realignment and focusing on that. We have a brand new commissioner who has a fantastic background in production, and so the Big Ten network is a primary focus and making that the staple that it could be. And so that, they explained that to us and just said, like, they are excited. They didn't even really care about, there wasn't even much talk about money or revenue or ads or anything like that in those early conversations. We were at one point talking about, hey, let's plan this out. We had the member schools. We were looking at going to the Big Ten headquarters in Chicago for our championship LAN. And we were starting to like put up together some schematics about, all right, well, how many PCs can we fit in this space? What would travel logistics look like? So they were fully supportive, but they just ultimately had to say, we can't do it right now and give it our best effort, but we trust you all to kind of really make this a proof of concept, and we'll support you in any way we can, just without the name.
Any athletic directors involved in any of those conversations?
I know that Doug at Minnesota, he's under athletics, and has had conversations with his athletic director. And other than that, I'm not aware of any other conversations that have happened amongst the Big Ten. I do think the West Coast schools have some athletic involvement with their programs, but they would definitely have to speak on that.
Speaking of West Coast schools, you are playing games that bring into question some distance and ping issues potentially. What were the conversations like? How are people feeling, especially when we look at like Smash Brothers? Like, is there angry folks, like upset? Is there anyone stepping in with like, is there a solution to that? Is that a concern, etc.?
Yeah, there's honestly the students want to play, and that's they are fully aware that sometimes there's going to be ping issues. for games like Valorant and being able to select the server that's best for balance ping. Smash obviously will be interesting. Hopefully with peer to peer that will. I mean, I've played East to West before and it hasn't been the worst thing in the world, but ultimately the whole thing on this is like it's for the students. I touched on this. The students are students no matter what college they're at. And they're they're having accomplishments in these Big Ten schools, and they're winning games, and sometimes they're having these upset wins over dominant schools in the space. But the admin sometimes just don't give that recognition, and the students are honestly kind of sick of it. They want to show that they can be successful, and praise goes a long way in some of those situations. And so ultimately it comes down to they just want to play and do the best that they can in playing. USC and UCLA both know that there's going to be like some time issues here and there. It's a pretty flexible rule set for rescheduling and finding those things. So it's all built around flexibility.
And walk me through, first of all, the format structure of the season, but second, like, get me hyped up about like what are you playing for? Is there, like, we talked about a LAN, can you share anything about the LAN? Is there a big trophy involved? Like, get me hyped about the competition and that stuff.
Adam, you know me, I'm gonna go all out on this.
That's true.
So the regular season, so we have 16 schools. One of the things we said is we all want to play each other. And we were like, well, we could do an 8-week like half round robin during the fall, and then another one in the spring. And then it was just kind of collaborative, like, let's just go NFL and do a 16-week season, and everybody plays everybody. And so we're very close to making a decision, but it sounds like the format is going to be schools will play another school for that week. So when I play Michigan State, I'll play Michigan State in the game titles that we're both registered for that entire week. And that gives us the opportunity to, if I want to drive over to East Lansing and do something in person, we can do that. Same with USC and UCLA. They could go and compete against each other and get those games done. And also it'll help with the timing. So if I know I'm playing USC this week, I can tell the teams like, hey, it's going to be like a 9 p.m. or 9:30 p.m. start time because that's 6 their time, 6:30. So yeah, we'll play the 16-week season, and then each game title will have, like traditional athletics, a regular season champion. And the placements of the season will give everyone a seed number, and then we will have the in-person LAN where every school makes the LAN. It's not even playoffs. It's just another tournament for the same games, seeded off the regular season. And then it is just a full tournament with one being crowned the Big E conference champion at the end.
Nice.
You're silent. I feel like I took your breath away.
Yeah.
I think, Adam, to that point, I want to applaud Kevin and their leadership in this way again, because I think that what's been cool about this is that sort of vision of like, hey, we're going to play, we're going to have those sort of like rivalry weeks. And to that point of like understanding there's going to be some outlier situations where you're playing UCLA and Rutgers is playing USC over the course of that week. So you have to sort of build and plan accordingly, right? And vice versa. And it's going to be more challenging for the two schools in the West Coast originally, before more members hop on a year from now, certainly. But I think that was pretty smart. We looked at a lot of different iterations, as Kevin mentioned originally. I think this was sort of the one that we're like, just like traditional, right? We kept on coming back to that model of like, we just want to be like traditional. We want to have a regular season champion. We want to have a postseason champion. The Big Ten women's basketball, they have a regular season conference champion, then they all come together and they play and they crown a conference champion, obviously on to, other efforts going forward. And I think that's what's been sort of central to these discussions is wanting to make sure that it looked like that, to Kevin's point earlier of, The students want that recognition. They want that opportunity, right? They want to be, they're proud of what they're doing. They want other people. Now I can beat Michigan State. I can beat Ohio State, and those rivalries that exist for Kevin in his backyard in Ann Arbor, those things can take on another level. And in conjunction with, football games or basketball games, you can do some of those scheduling opportunities to sort of add that hype around those events.
Speaking of that, there's a question in chat that's related to this, but like, is there any effort in scheduling to line up with traditional athletic contests that's happening? Someone put in here, talks of OSU and Michigan playing each other in late November in the Big House or the Shoe. That sounds dope.
I can't.
Does Kevin want to comment on this?
I can't give specific information yet, but I can tell you that there will be a digital version of the game, and more to come soon. And it's going to be good. It's going to be. I think it's going to be a big event.
It's an awesome opportunity to capitalize on engaging alumni and other departments on campus, including athletics, in a fun and unique way. So if you're not thinking about it, I think it's a missed opportunity for all these schools. I think it's awesome.
I mean, Michigan right now, since I've been here, it has blown up with esports talks around campus. Yeah. We're working with the School of Kinesiology, Broadcast, School of Business. In November, we're going to be hosting an esports symposium with our keynote speaker is Dr. Miglior, and she's going to be coming and having a presentation, and that's going to be capped off by a LAN and potentially a college invitational. And so, yeah, and that's what I'm hoping happens at campuses. I mean, Penn State just opened up their esports facility this week. Iowa is working on building out more of their program. Amon Green over at Nebraska, he's hitting the ground running right now. No pun intended for his career. But Nebraska's looking at doing some really big things. And all of us are working together to support each other. And we're talking about having potential conferences in the future that are not Big Ten oriented, but are facilitated by Big Ten institutions. And, also playing into what we are all known for academically and our research capabilities, because this field is severely deprived of good research. There's a lot of research that's been done that is good. And then there's a lot of research that's been done that's been kind of, if you know how to read research, you can tell it was maybe rushed or the data was not exactly what they thought and the conclusions are off. So there's a lot of opportunity for institutions that have the ability to get the grants and write for those funding models to contribute more to this space.
For sure. That's awesome. I want to get that date of the symposium and see if I can sneak in, whatever the cost is. That sounds awesome. Michigan fan right here. I think we're among friends in this call when it comes to that. Although I'm not wearing my jersey, two of us are trying to stay kind of in between everybody, but we know what's up. But Bilski, great friend of mine. For some reason, I've been on Michigan State's campus way more than Michigan's at this point, and I need to change that. But I know that athletics at Michigan State has been super supportive and showing him spaces at their football stadium of things that they could do and collaborate with on. So that's awesome. It's super exciting.
And I mean, to that point, Adam, I apologize. Sergio at Maryland, he took that opportunity with that opportunity in mind that they were going to commit to his program. He wouldn't have taken that job otherwise. And they're going to build that out, so you get those, really important leaders in say, hey, this is an opportunity to build a program that you want at a big state institution with a lot of resources at its disposal. And I'm glad Kevin introduced sort of the academic component of it, because I think that's what's central, right? I mean, kudos to you, what you're doing at Ferris State. I mean, that's where we're heading in this, and that's awesome. I mean, that's showing the value of this, and it's more than, let's be honest, a VanRyn game on a Monday night or an Overwatch match on a Tuesday or whatever it may be, right? I mean, that's where we're getting buy-in from the institutions, is showing that it's central and critical to everything that they're doing and using it through that, to be able to build those things out. And you guys at Ferris State is an awesome example of putting the resources behind it with that model in mind.
for sure. I forgot Maryland's in the Big Ten. There are so many all-stars of esports directors in the Big Ten. Like this whole thing was basically inevitable anyway. Like obviously anything that Kevin touches, it's going to happen, or else you better get out of the way. But sheesh. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Wow.
I keep teasing John at Ohio State. I was like, enjoy your last year of having the best esports facility in the Big Ten, because Sergio gets his next fall, and Maryland's gonna take the crown.
And who knows what conversations are happening behind closed doors at other institutions. I mean, it's just crazy, and super awesome. Had another question here. Kyber in chat has 2 questions. Is there any interest or conversation about adding esports only schools into these conferences? I'll let you guys speak on the Big Esports Conference on that, if that was a conversation that's been had.
Yeah, I've actually had this a few times where schools have said, like, can we join? Yeah, and the Big Esports Conference is starting where it is for a reason, but I do think that there's the potential in where the Big Esports Conference could be something that facilitates a Big Ten division and an SEC division, and like pairing where the model is pairing schools with their athletic counterparts, and underneath that umbrella, or maybe the NECC just does that and brings those in. So I think that you called it this morning, right, or yesterday. This is D1 week in esports, and
the news keeps coming. You all need to slow down. Can we space it out a little bit? Like, it was just like D1 thing after D1 thing. And it's like, y'all were holding out until one person broke it, and then everyone just rushed out with their the news. So I don't know. It's cool though.
I tell you what, Jacob was holding me back from the release. Like, I was ready 3 weeks ago, and he's like, no. Like, let's just wait. We've got other things to announce. I'm like, fine. Like, I mean, you do have you're experienced in this. I trust you.
I know I had this conversation with somebody about being the first, who was going to be the first group to come out with something like this with D1s, and what was the backlash, if any. What was it going to look like? And NEC wasn't the first one. Nace broke that one. But the feedback, I mean, there was some negative on the Nace one, but the NECC one, massive, like super positive, which actually surprised me. But
Adam, if you're buying in, that's the negative.
I'm not. Hey, I don't buy into anything. But I mean, it's cool. Like, I can't argue. I'm a Michigan fan. Like, I want this to happen. Like, this is cool. It's
so funny. It's so funny you say this, because Kevin and I kept on waiting when we announced this on Tuesday. We kept on waiting for the negative feedback and the negative fallout, and somebody to push back. I mean, it's just it's just the nature of the beast.
It took 4 hours.
Okay.
Like, I was surprised. But I don't know. I think it's cool. Like, you want to see Michigan play Michigan State if you're one of those fans. Like, that's just cool.
And I think one of the things that's fueled the positivity, and what was I would say kind of the backbone of the Big Esports Conference, is we wanted to interfere with nothing else that already exists in the space. We want our own competition with our own regular season championship and our own conference championship, and that's it. We don't want a part of anything national championship or international. Like, the Big Ten or the Big Esports Conference isn't going to jump into Red Bull Campus Clutch or try and get bids for CECC to their finals. We're our own thing, and we got a lot of positive feedback on that, and I was happy to see that, because there was some schools who thought it wasn't a good idea, that we should contribute to the rest, and
that actually surprised me, because a lot of the people who were positive for that, like, they were very negative about how do I say this? A lot of those people want to be able to play these big schools at some point. That's like what they want. Like, no name NEIA school wants to play a big D1. Like, that's what I want to do at Aquinas. And they saw this as like, oh, this is fine because they'll do their own thing, but then we'll play them. They'll play in NECC too. And I do not believe that's actually going to happen. So Kevin, as the director on the call, like, do you plan to have your teams in NECC national competition and Big Esports Conference?
100%. I've got,
really?
I have 23 teams registered.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. Okay.
And because the big thing about the Big Esports Conference is you only get one team per school per game.
That's right. That's right.
So, and I've had a couple of conversations with some schools that have said like, oh man, it would be, my athletic director is a huge Michigan fan. Like it would be so cool if we played you guys. And I was like, all you gotta do is just let me know. Like we can set up a scrim and you could blow it out of the water with a stream and everything. Like go for it. Our players, everyone knows that everyone is always looking for a scrim. So those are easy opportunities. And if it is someone in your administration who is not, relevant to esports or doesn't understand the space, they're not going to know if it's a scrim.
That's fair.
Throw a pizza party.
I didn't think about the multiple teams, and that makes sense for most of the big schools.
Yeah, and I think, Adam, to that point, the fact that it's a separate entity probably led to some of the positive feedback that we got, quite frankly.
For sure.
And we didn't hear the like negatives of like, oh, well, how come they get this, right? It was like, this is a separate entity, and we're treating it as such, and we're proud of that, right? As Kevin alluded to, separate championship, separate regular season, all that stuff. There's no intermingling. There's not going to be Kevin's programs in Michigan. His teams can win titles in the NECC, and they can win the Big Esports Conference championship, right? So I think that's where we didn't get the pushback from Division twos, Division threes, NAIs, junior colleges, Canadian schools that we're really proud to work with, right? I mean, that was the thing. It was very clearly defined that this is a separate entity, and that's why, like, I think originally it's like even the schools that were like, to Kevin's point, like, oh, that'd be awesome. I wish we could do that. They're like, well, good on them. They did it, right? And now how do we do it? And that's the dominoes that we've seen sort of fall out as a result, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I really wanted to bring up today and touch on is we really have to get past the NACE and NECC like virtual beef that seems to just culminate. Like I posted that graphic on your tweet yesterday of like the NECC is Deadpool and NACE is Spider-Man. Like it is, they have collectively the same goal, just two very different methods of approach. But like one, like the other, like both, don't like either. It doesn't matter. Like everything we're doing is for students. Like, I don't, for sure. I'm not Schembeckler, and I'm not going to have a statue in front of Michigan when I'm done there. Like it's all for the students, and that's what matters between both conferences.
Couldn't agree more. Really well said. I'm glad you introduced it. I get the question, Adam, all the time from directors. I'm sure you can imagine. Well, do we have to be exclusive? Do we have to choose? Do we have to be in one or the other? And I say no. Play in as many leagues, have as many great competitions. We want to be one of them, and that's been our goal since day one. I think that Kevin speaks to it well. That being better. I can only speak for us. Working to see what NACE has done, to see what they've accomplished over the years, has made us a million times better organization to try to keep up with a behemoth like that and try to provide our competitors with what they've offered in the space well before we were ever a thing. So absolutely, I think that we're in this together, and I think it is like you're like, oh, you're in the same space. Yes, we are, and we're proud of that fact. But we are never ever going to say it's us or them. And I tell our teams all the time, like, go win, go win, go win and play. And if you want to play in 12 Rocket League leagues, then do it and have fun and experience it. And at the end of the day, we just hope that when the semester ends, you want to come back and do it again with us. And I think that's been sort of central to everything that we've done since day one is making sure that people knew that. I say all the time, it's a stock line. There's 1 million organizations out there. There's going to be 2 million next year at this time. We just want to be one of them. And we want to do, we're going to control, we can control, we're going to do everything in our power to provide the best possible experience for your players and your community. But God, play in as many leagues. We don't offer every title. We're not going to be everything to everyone. It's not our goal. That's not a model for success, in my opinion. So that's been very, very critical throughout. And, when you talk about the D1 league, I applaud what they did with the Big Eats. That's awesome. I applaud what they did prior to that. That's different. That's outside the box thinking. That's good stuff. And I think that's what's making this better across the board. I think we're going to continue to see more of those things. I know we're working internally on how can we be better. We talk a lot about how can we be better tomorrow than we were yesterday, and we're going to be better tomorrow than we are today, right? I mean, that's what we do, and that's where we're at in this thing. And gosh, yeah, we support them, and I hope they would say the same for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, hearing from other coaches and directors their experience in NECC, although I've never competed in NECC, I know that you all are doing fantastic things and providing opportunities for those programs that they can't get elsewhere. I think I spend a lot of time on Twitter,
What?
I know. I think I'm a pretty good source on, too much time, but it's fun. But I know
it's good for the space now that you're not coaching, because now you have more time on Twitter.
More time on Twitter. Is it good? I don't know. Maybe I've gone soft. But I would say,
old, dude. You're getting old.
That's true. It is. But I would say for the most part, the people who are either anti-NACE or anti-NRCC are the same trolls who just want to start things. And then a lot of their students, to be honest. But for the most part, I was the chair of the comp council for NACE, and we were always like, oh, this is what NEC's doing for this rule. Like, do we agree with it? Should we go with that? Should we do something else? I mean, NECC does something new, and it's like, oh, that's a great idea. Like,
it's reflective of traditional sports. Like, yeah, I mean, look at Big Ten football now, and then look 10 years ago, and it's like the SEC was the only conversation, and it's shifted. The Big Ten started to change our model, started to, do things differently, and we do collectively make each other better.
For sure. And I think it's really easy for us to forget about a couple years ago when the only options we had were leagues that were not listening to programs and not listening to students and directors and just doing whatever they thought was best. And now we see these two very large leagues nationally who actually listen to those members, listen to those students, listen to those directors, and are making new opportunities based on those requests. And that's why we see the D1 thing happen the same week. They weren't talking together, but those schools were asking for those exact things. And those new ideas were driven by the schools, not by the leagues. And I can say that with confidence on the NACE side. Like, it was not NACE pushing this idea at all. It was a lot of Bilski coming in and be like, hey, we want a D1 conference. And we're like, okay, let's look at it.
Bilski doesn't do those things.
Well, he does.
And I think to that point, Adam, is exactly what you're saying. We listen, we just like NACE, we're a membership-driven organization. We do everything in our power to serve our members. We want our players to have as good a possible experience as they can, and that's been our goal since day one. I think we came from an area of traditional athletics in some ways, and we built our model that way. And I think that it's worked for us. And I think people that know me know that I'm in it, so I see the warts, I see the flaws, I see how much better we've got to get every single day, and how many challenges are ahead of us. And that's my goal. But what I keep coming back to, and why I've made this career change personally on my end, is the fact that it's such a positive collective space. I mean, right now, look at it. Kevin's working with John at Ohio State to make this conference, to make this as good a possible thing. Can you imagine that happening in traditional athletics? Can you imagine Ryan Day, Jim Harbaugh calling up and saying, hey, what are you doing thing? How do we make this work better? That's ridiculous, right? So, I mean, the fact that these conversations are happening, the fact that, there's the sharing of information, people are talking with one another. Hey, what do you do? What works for you? Hey, what's your, how do you recruit to your campus? How do you get kids? How do you improve your program? What are you doing? That's really special to be a part of right now. And I hope, honestly, selfishly, I hope it never changes. I'm probably smarter and know that at some point it will. But right now, it's really, really special to be a part of from where I sit.
Agreed. I have a question here in chat. Marco, former CCL operations and current West Point assistant director. Having engaged on the back end of league structuring, et cetera, competitive rulings, does this new league act as a means to tackle some of the problems? For instance, can we expect full schedules of games in time or 0% forfeit rates or such? Because this is conference competition. Any
yeah, I think we can expect to be better. I do think there's still that student club factor that can, sometimes jump in there. Maybe they forget they have an exam and can't make a match and it's an FF or a reschedule. And also we've worked in the flexibility and everyone is kind of collectively understanding like, hey, be flexible if possible for, the certain circumstances that may pop up. But yeah, it is really looking to tackle some issues, and especially just about playing each other. You know, I'm an Army vet. You know, go Army, beat Navy. I would love to see. I mean, they have the Armed Forces competition,
Yep.
but yeah, in kind of the same sense that what that was collectively trying to do and put the branches against each other and create something that's exactly what we're trying to do. And yeah, we'll learn from it for sure. And you know, in a few years, hopefully it's not just student clubs. It's you know, full-time faculty staff with full support.
How are we feeling about a league that goes over spring and fall semester? Concerns around that?
But I think from our perspective, this has been one of the things we've had the most positive feedback about, quite frankly, is the fact that you know who you're playing, the fact that that's not going to change mid-semester, there's not going to be new faces, anything like that. So I can only speak to what I've spoke about with a handful of directors that they're excited about that model. It's very different, certainly, but like Kevin mentioned, it was important for every school to play every other school, and I think that was wise, and how we could do it throughout the course, and understanding that we didn't want it to be a 25, 30 week entity, right? That was just nonstop. We wanted it to have sort of a defined first semester start, defined second semester start, defined window for a LAN effort in you know, the springtime. So I think that's one of the better things about it, is that you're going to get to know you know, these players. You're going to get to know these rosters that Kevin's going to put forth, and that John's going to put forth, and that Sergio and Naman are going to put forth, and things like that. So I think that's one of the real hallmarks of what they're trying to build.
Yeah, and we you know, the 16-week season is it's kind of a breath of fresh air that like in January, that's you know, 4 teams that I don't have to register and or do tryouts for, and so like that there's a lot of schools that are excited for that aspect. The one, I'd say the one beef that we've gotten is mostly from the student run organizations of, hey, we do tryouts another round in January, can we make roster changes? And up to this point, it's been like, no, you can't make roster changes for the last 8 weeks of the regular season, but the you know, bring your best team to the LAN because everybody qualifies. They are 2 separate events. So if you do have like, you know, we had a freshman join Michigan who you know, for those that may not know, our CS team is usually pretty decent. We just had a freshman come on who is significantly higher ranked than any other CS player we've ever had at Michigan, and didn't join the Discord until 30 minutes before tryouts. So, you know, maybe those schools will get that, and they'll get like 8th or 9th place during the regular season. They'll show up to the LAN and then just clean up, and so that's kind of an exciting element that new you know, can change. And Jacob knows I was actually kind of pushy for a longer season in the NECC, so who knows, maybe on the legend side specifically, but you know,
I
who knows?
love it. I think that's where most competition collegiately is going to head, is a year-long something, because being on the comp council for NACE, I am so sick of, all right, we have 10 weeks of the fall semester. We need to fit in 8 matches, and we need to have everyone signed up by the second week of classes. And I'm just so sick of the constant rush, and like, we can't change a schedule because there's no time left. And I'm assuming those conversations happen with NECC and every other league, is like, we are stuffed. But there's been just so much pushback in previous years from a lot of institutions about that idea. A lot of times because they're like, oh, we transferred people, or people leave,
Right.
etc.
We shortened our regular season. I mean, NECC, Kevin's been involved in a lot of those discussions because of that very fact you're speaking about, Adam.
Yeah.
We just tried to jam too much. Listen, our nationals was in the summer. It was a disaster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the reason we responded, and this is, you know, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think at some point, as it continues to evolve, we get to a point of where it looks more like traditional, right? And there's windows of play, and we play, you know, whether it's a fall semester, we play X number of titles, and then winter we play X number of titles, and the spring we play X number of titles. Now, right now, we know there's the really popular titles, but do we get to that point? Maybe. And I think that's exciting. And I couldn't agree more. We try to jam everything into a really short window. You know, we do a fall split, we do a spring split. I think as we go forward, it's certainly something that we discuss very regularly internally at the NECC.
Yeah, it's the competition committee. This was a topic we talked about a lot within the NECC, and for those who don't know, I am the chair of competition for the NECC. So I guess there's like a few like lenient, biases everywhere here, but
that's just esports.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But we've got our Canadian schools where their Canadian Thanksgiving's at a whole different time, and Tyler Hetherington was very adamant, like, we need to have this off. It needs to stop being a forcing schools to reschedule to enjoy a national holiday when the U.S. schools don't have to do that. And we were all like 100%. When we were building out the Big Esports Conference, UCLA said, we don't start until the end of September. So we're on quarters. We can't do the start time that everybody else does. And so we said, all right, well then and that really tied into more of like why we're doing the 16-week season, because we can't start until the second week of October. Why would we try and cram that all into just the 2 months and a week that is left? Let's just stretch it out and make it meaningful, and having a schedule that I can send to my admin for the full year, like the academic calendar. That's just huge.
Oh, I mean,
shout out to Ligo West to be able to generate that on their platform once the schedules are in, by the way.
When I was at Aquinas, we got the WAC to officially sponsor esports. And as soon as they did, like 2 weeks later, we had 3 years worth of schedules sent to us.
Yeah,
it was insane. I mean, this is normal for traditional athletics, but I have never seen anything more than 6 months out. And it was amazing.
Yeah, and I think that stuff, I mean, that's the stuff that we talk about, the evolution of the space. That's the growth and development, right? I mean, that's the stuff that we need to, when we're trying to get interest, we're trying to build momentum, we're trying to gain eyeballs, we're trying to gain traction. Like, listen, this is your schedule. This is what you can look to. This is what you can point to 3 months from now, 3 years from now, right? And you can know that on this date, like, listen, Michigan football schedule, now obviously it's a bad example with the conference realignment, but those schedules are built out years in advance so that people can plan and you can do those things. And we're getting there. And I think that speaks to good development in the space and where we've continued to grow and will continue to grow.
Agreed. I don't have any other questions, and I know we've been kind of going for a while, but is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about or touch on?
I had an idea that was brought up to me by a student for you, Adam. And we kind of talked about it with the the conference as they are, but since you're not, I think you're coaching Rocket League, but as a professor of professional esports production, I do think there's room for a commissioner's corner with Coach Antor and bringing in Michael Brooks and Jacob and having like conversations and bouncing those things back and forth and starting to unite the space. And that was something that was brought up to me, and I've kind of sat on and thought about, but I wanted to throw it your way and just see what you thought.
I like the idea. Doesn't sound as spicy as I prefer, because all you commissioners are a little bit more professional than I am. But I mean, it could be good. I mean, we could do some good updates on like what the space is. I'm sick of going to a panel that's like the state of college esports. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get the news, the gritty, like, let's talk about it. And then it's like so high level.
I knew that.
So frustrating. It's everybody. Everyone's like, oh yeah, collegiate esports is big. It's getting big. I'm like, what the? No, where are we going? Does anyone know where we're heading? I don't totally know.
You could bring in Nuke as a moderator, have him paint like NECC on one side of his face and Nace on the other, and just have him flip every time he's talking. He's the true middleman of this whole
That's
space.
not a bad idea. There's a lot of there's definitely an opportunity for that. I writing it down. I think that would be cool.
Maybe your students can produce it.
Oh, maybe. Now you're putting homework on me. That's more work than just a banter with Antor. No, but that's a good idea. I wonder if there's something we could tie that to. That would make sense too.
I'll tell you right now, I'll take that one step further. We'd love to collaborate with them on some sort of effort. And we've got some ideas about those things. So okay. I'll just leave it there. I'm not, we've never gone down this path. We've crossed, not Michael and I haven't. But I've crossed with other members of their staff about collaborating and things like that. And I think there's an opportunity to do something there because, again, at the end of the day, I can only speak for us. At the end of the day, this is for the student athletes. This is for them to have as good as a possible experience, and we do not fight whatsoever. I hope the schools enjoy playing with us. I hope the schools enjoy playing with them. At the end of the day, that's what this is about, and that's where we're at. That's why we're in this space.
For sure. I appreciate that.
Sorry, it's not more combative. I apologize.
No.
I know it's not driving. I know it's not exciting to say that.
It's too political, Jacob.
Like that. Yeah.
I've heard from
not a good debate model.
No, I've heard from both sides that there's interest in collaborating. It's just like we're so busy, and there's nothing that's like forcing us to collaborate at this point. So
no, of course not. But let's do it. I mean, we're in this. Listen, this is why we're here, and this is why they're there at the end of the day. And we're not fighting whatsoever. I'm glad you introduced it, Kevin. I'm sick of hearing it. We want teams to have as good a possible experience. At the end of the day, bar none. We want them to compete with us, but if they don't, gosh, go win, go have a great experience. If you tell me, hey, that school doesn't compete in the NECC, I want them to have a terrible time, then you don't know me at all, quite frankly. That's what this boils down to. And that's the end all and be all. It's why we're here. It's why we're proud to work with Kevin and the Big Ten institutions. It's why that Adam, you and I have gotten to become friends. I mean, it's those type things that's really special to me.
Here's the spice for you, Adam.
Oh boy.
NACE and NECC both host a Rocket League doubles tournament. And then it's legit. It's the legit Commissioner's Cup. The winners of the doubles tournament for each conference
I'm not
bring
touching
on
that title. I'm not getting sued, but I like the idea of something like that.
And then the commissioners are the third person. Yep. And then they play. Yep.
This is useless.
Winner gets to put out their schedule
so
first.
Let's band together and make a new enemy.
We do that. No, we do that. We put it out last because we want to do first. We want to get off those play dates.
There you go. That's not a bad idea. I wonder how some of these top CRL teams would play in 2v2s. That'd be interesting.
I'll do that with Michigan against Ferris. I'll take my top 2 Rocket League players and play you and your top 2.
Hey,
there it is.
No. Well, send me their ranks and we'll have a conversation maybe.
SSL.
Wow. Okay. No, I appreciate you both coming on. This was a really good conversation, enlightening. I love the opportunity anytime to bring things out and talk more, and give the whole space more background. I think it's really easy for us who are in these meetings behind closed doors to understand what's happening and why it's happening, but it's really hard for a lot of directors who are not in those meetings. I know it happens a lot with NACE where like from the competition council, we're like, this is why we made that decision. It makes perfect sense from the information I know, but everyone not in those meetings does not understand. So I really appreciate that. Where can people find you? How about that? Where can they find you? Shout out a follow or place to follow you or whatever, all that good stuff.
I mean, Big Esports Conf on Twitter is the conference, and then I'm Coach Palm Esport on Twitter. So yeah, feel free. I think
Jacob's private now on Twitter. So
I am. I'm so soft. I am. You're absolutely right, dude. You're absolutely right. I'm so soft. I'm afraid.
It's fine.
No. Yeah. Obviously, at Big Esports Conf that Kevin mentioned, that's the best source certainly. And I'm just gonna say shout out to Kevin because he built that video from scratch, and it's gotten like 125,000 views since Tuesday, and it's 3 days later. And we were joking about this, like ridiculous. And shout out to him. That's next level. And it says to me that, we had an advisory committee meeting, early this afternoon, and we talked about, that says to me that people outside our bubble are stuff, and that's awesome. And I think that really is important. So that's, at the end of the day, that's what this is about, is rising and making better. And I think that this is a big step. And Adam, you do it in a variety of ways, but I agree. These discussions are better than tweets that are 200 characters and whatever, and people take a word or two out of context or whatnot. So I appreciate the opportunity. Always here, that, and we're transparent to a fault. So if there's ever any question, people, most people have my information, and they're more than happy. Please reach out. I do my best to get back to people as fast as I humanly can.
For sure, much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah, go for it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping by, and thanks everybody for tuning in. We had some good conversation here, good viewership. I'm a fan. I will be back next Monday with our regular scheduled programming, but thanks for stopping by this special one here, and have a great weekend. And we're muted. I'm not muted.
I feel so lost, never at home. Need to be strong, every breath of